Hi, welcome to Earl on AI. I'm Earl. It seems like new AI innovations are springing up every day, and there's one that may be coming soon to a computing device near you. It's called Agentic AI, and it transitions artificial intelligence from a passive source of information to an active participant in our digital lives. What can it do for us? How does it work? Let's find out. In just the last few years, we've seen lots of innovation in the world of large language models, with the heavyweights like ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude and others all locked in a stiff competition to one-up each other and produce a better solution for us. And honestly, these tools are amazingly useful. I use them on a daily basis, and I find them to be both fascinating and extremely productive. I'm going to take an aside at the beginning of this episode to point out that large language models aren't perfect. They're impressive, but sometimes they get things wrong. And in fairness, they will actually tell you so. They usually have a warning that says, AI isn't perfect. Validate the information that you get here. That's a good idea. Here's an event that happened to me just today. I was interacting with a large language model. I'm not going to say which one, because in fairness, none of them are perfect. But in this case, I asked about a significant stock market event that happened in January of this year. The Chinese startup DeepSeek released information in January 2025 about their new model, and specifically about what they said it took to train their new model. And it was kind of shocking. A lot of tech stocks took a dive that day, and in fact, NVIDIA lost a huge amount of valuation that day, which I think they've gained back, and that happened pretty quickly. But anyway, took the world by storm for a minute. And when I asked the large language model about this, it said that was fictional, never happened. So I thought, wow, okay, that's not right. So I gave the large language model a couple of reference points, including a couple of news articles from back then in January, along with the URLs for those news articles. Still, the large language model insisted that this was a plausible but fictional narrative. And certainly, if something like losing almost $600 billion worth of valuation happened in the course of a day, that the LLM would know about that. It took a little bit of duking it out with the large language model for it to finally realize that, oops, this really did happen. So I'm just telling you, watch the facts that you get from these large language models. They're often extremely good, and they do have access to the internet, and they can find out things that have happened recently, but they don't always get it right. But some inaccuracies notwithstanding, the innovations that we've seen in the last few years have been genuinely impressive. And one thing that might surprise people, since all the hype has been fairly recent, is that artificial intelligence work has actually been going on since the 1950s. That's decades ago. The initial work in the field was done at places like Dartmouth and Stanford and MIT. During these intervening decades, it looked like there were a couple of times when AI was really going to take off. One was during the 1980s with the rise of something called expert systems. These encapsulated the expertise from people who were experts in a particular field and then purported to leverage that expertise for other people who were working on things, trying to solve problems. The expert systems didn't actually deliver with all of the value that was originally anticipated. This and some other factors led to a couple of time periods that folks in the AI community refer to as AI winters. Times when the enthusiasm and the funding and a lot of the research around AI dried up for a while. But it certainly bounced back. Anyhow, I brought that up just to point out that this phenomenon where something percolates in the technology world for a long period of time and then seemingly comes out of nowhere, at least as far as the general public knows, it's not that unusual. And you might be familiar with another instance where this happened. In the 1960s, the U.S. Department of Defense's Advanced Research Projects Agency, or ARPA, started work on a networking project that they called ARPANET. It eventually morphed into the internet that we know today. So 1960s, that was a long time ago. But of course, it took until the 1990s for the internet to come up on everybody's radar. Newly empowered with its killer app, the World Wide Web, and the web browser, the internet suddenly became a phenomenon. Now, of course, there were a lot of other enabling technologies that allowed that to happen. The rise of home computers, the availability of dial-up modems, and a lot of other things made that the right place at the right time. Now, once the World Wide Web was in place, a lot of other innovations followed, like e-commerce and social media, and these all began to cascade with each other. And that's what we're seeing now in AI, something that was worked on for decades, but all of a sudden, due to the right place at the right time, along with some milestone discoveries, has suddenly taken the world by storm. So the World Wide Web empowered e-commerce and social media and a lot of other innovations, just like the rise in large language models has empowered a new paradigm called AI agents, or Agentic AI. So what are they? How do they work? And what differentiates an AI agent from just the large language models that we use all the time, like ChatGPT? Maybe the best way to describe this is to compare Agentic AI to a large language model. That comparison is a little tricky because they're not separate concepts, but actually interrelated. So think of your favorite large language model. It's sitting there waiting for you to give it a prompt, to ask it a question, to make a statement. And then when you do, it gives you a response. The underlying technology, although there's lots of complexities under the hood, at its core, it's pretty simple. It takes the words that you give it and it predicts what the next words will be. Now, AI enthusiasts, I know you might be screaming at your screen right now. It's not words, it's tokens. I understand that. I'm just trying to make the concept as simple as I can. You give it words, it predicts the next words. And it does so passively. It waits until you give it a prompt, and then it gives you a response. AI agents aren't like that. They're autonomous. They take action, sometimes proactively. They may use a large language model to do their reasoning, but they're doing stuff. It has transitioned from just something that passively responds to your prompts to something that actually takes action based on goals and objectives that you give to it. So how does an AI agent work? Well, it's got several components, and some of them are optional, but a lot of the AI agents have these. One is perception. The AI agent can take in information from the outside world. That information might be in the form of a prompt or a goal that you gave to it. It might come from sensors that it's connected to. It might come from software interfaces that we call APIs. AI agents have reasoning. They can use a large language model to help them understand information and context. And in fact, they can use a pattern called reasoning and action, shortened to REACT, where they can think through what to do step by step. Using this capability, agents can do planning. They can decompose a high-level objective into a list of subtasks that they then need to execute in order to accomplish the objective. AI agents can have both short-term and long-term memory. The short-term memory helps them to understand and recall the context of an ongoing action or operation. And the long-term memory could be, say, a database of facts that the agent has access to that help guide its operations. Now, here's a very interesting aspect of AI agents that actively differentiates it from your standard large language model use. Agents can use external tools to accomplish their tasks. What are these external tools? Well, software interfaces. Things like connections to your email or connections to the internet to go browse and do research for you on a particular topic. It can even create software code and then use another external tool to test and or execute that software code in service of its objectives. I mean, this is really active and dynamic. Imagine an AI agent writing a Python script to try and accomplish one of its objectives, and then testing and executing that Python script, taking the results, being able to use that information to then take the next step on whatever the goal is. Finally, agents have learning and adaptation. They can learn from their performance in past scenarios and do better the next time. I mean, you could already see where this concept would be transformative, but I'll give a few examples of where AI agents could be useful and, in fact, how they're being used already today. My favorite AI at the moment is Google Gemini, and I don't get anything for saying that. It's just the one that I use on a daily basis the most right now. It has a mode called Deep Research. You can give it a prompt, which can include some bullet points and a general idea of a topic that you want research to be performed on. It will come up with a research plan, show you the research plan to make sure it's on the right track and ask you to validate, then execute the research plan, which can include surfing the internet, coming up with dozens of documents, etc. It will digest those documents and then present you with a cohesive research paper, including all of the references. This is not just a large language model giving you predictive tokens based on a prompt that you gave it. This is an agent because it is perceiving its environment. It is using external tools to accomplish its tasks. It's doing planning. It broke down the research paper tasks into sub-bullets and asked me to confirm. It's active. Even though it was waiting for me to ask it to do this research paper, once I asked it, once I gave it that objective, it then executed on it. A lot of steps. And even allowed me to save out to Google Docs, which in itself was the use of an external tool. And as a personal assistant, AI agents can do even more things for you. It can go through your emails, and based on what it knows about you, it can tell you which emails should be prioritized. It can take a look at your schedule, see how you need to readjust things in order to be as efficient as you can with your time. And if you give it the okay to do it, it can even actively readjust your schedule, like rescheduling calendar appointments. In fact, you could create entire business workflows using AI agents that guide you through step-by-step processes and proactively work on things that you need to get done throughout the day. And in larger enterprises, of course, AI agents are being used all over the place. You've probably seen them in customer service, but they're also being used in finance, in healthcare, in scientific research. And this incredible utility that they bring means that we're going to see them more and more. In fact, the industry actively predicts that we're going to see incredible adoption over the next few years of AI agents, and in particular, this orchestration of multiple agents that is called Agentic AI. So who's working on Agentic AI? Well, it might be easier to say, who isn't? At least in the tech world. All the big players are in on the game. Amazon, Google, Microsoft. In fact, with Microsoft, you've probably already seen their Copilot AI agent that is everywhere now. It's in your Windows, it's in your Office. It's even with Visual Studio Code if you're a software developer. Now, the one thing that I will say is that some of these technology companies are getting actually kind of aggressive in terms of pushing AI capabilities and AI agents into their products, whether you want them or not. And I'm a little dismayed by this assertiveness, but it does underscore how much of a commercial interest these companies have in getting AI agent capabilities out to their consumers. You can use ready packaged AI agent capabilities from the cloud, or you can build your own AI agents if you want to. Tools like LangChain and AutoGen and Crew.ai give you the capability to program your own AI agents. Now, if you're going to do this, you probably should roll up your sleeves and make sure that your Python skills are up to date, because practically all of the innovation that goes on in AI space is done in the Python programming language. Speaking of which, if you're so inclined from a technology or programming perspective, there are lots of great resources out there that can teach you how to create your own AI implementations and your own AI agents. One of these days, I might actually showcase a little bit of the fun that I've had with AI in Python. Although if you're interested in that kind of thing, there are lots of YouTube videos out there already with creators who are very adept at showing you how to implement your own AI stuff and how to do your own AI agents. As a fun exercise, I did a chatbot that was moody. It would randomly pick from a number of different personas. One was nurturing and caring, would try to answer your question in the most pleasant way possible. And another was angry and insulting and would give you the answer to your query, but would do so in a very demeaning fashion. Another was lazy, and it just didn't want to answer your question. It would only do so reluctantly. This was all by rotating something called a system prompt that I inserted into the chat conversation before the user prompt. And it made for something that was not just entertaining, but also very educational. Programming and playing with your own AI is a huge amount of fun. But this obviously poses some new risks that we need to be thinking about because agentic AI, as I mentioned, is active. It's autonomous. It's doing things. It's not just sitting around waiting for you to ask a question. And as you could imagine, that comes with a lot of security things that we need to think about. OWASP has done an amazing job at modeling what some of these threats could be and also providing some potential mitigations for the threats in their OWASP Agentic AI Threat and Mitigations Guide. I'll have a link for this in the video, and you should definitely check it out. I can't even begin to do it justice here. So instead, let's just talk about some general risks that might be easy for you to imagine when you think about an AI that is not only capable, but active and doing things on your behalf autonomously. Well, obviously, one risk is data exposure. What happens if my AI agent is subverted or malfunctions and uploads all my private information to the internet? What happens if a bank is using AI agents to monitor transactions and the AI agent just goes nuts and deletes all of the bank accounts? If an AI can run these external tools, including even creating a program of its own and then running it, could an attacker use this AI agent, if they hacked into it somehow, to be able to then pivot into the rest of my enterprise's network? What if an AI agent gets confused or stuck in a loop that makes the AI agent suddenly start slurping up all the computing resources? Now, there are some activities that, due to their high-stakes nature, require a human to be in the loop to review and confirm an action before the AI agent executes it. However, what if for some reason, all of a sudden, a lot of those things happen all at once, either accidentally or maliciously, and that human that is in the loop for review purposes gets overwhelmed and can't keep up with all the requests that are coming in for confirmation? That's a lot of things that can go wrong. Are there any ways that we can steer around these potential problems? Well, it can get complicated, and for official prescriptive security practitioner advice, I would recommend that you go out and find some authoritative references, including the OWASP documents that I've referred to. And if you are a security professional that is working in the field trying to secure your enterprise's ongoing implementations of AI, I would wholeheartedly recommend that you look into the documentation that's out there, the threat models that have come up, things like the OWASP GenAI security project, MITRE Atlas. Begin to wrap your head around the risks that are associated with the implementation of AI, especially because this is the Wild West, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So with all that said, let's talk about just a few concepts that can really help you out, not just with AI or agentic AI, but security in general. One of these is least privilege. And trust me, least privilege is your friend. This is the concept where a user or a piece of software is only granted the rights that it needs to accomplish its task and no more. For instance, if an AI agent doesn't need access to your private sensitive data, don't give it access to your private sensitive data. If it doesn't have that access, then it can't misuse that access accidentally. If the AI agent needs to be able to run programs, limit what it can do. Put things in a sandbox. Build a barrier, a barricade around it, so that if it does get out of hand, it can only get so far. And you've limited the amount of damage that the AI agent could do, especially if somehow an attacker has managed to subvert your AI agent and is trying to make it do nefarious things. And another thing that you can and likely should do is, for high stakes activities, put a human in the loop. Make sure that the AI agent, even though autonomous, isn't acting totally autonomously, that there's a check and balance on things that it's going to do that could have wide-ranging or devastating impacts. Resource overload can be handled in a number of ways. First off, if it's a legitimate resource overload, if your computers are just being overtaxed, you can use the scaling techniques that we've been using both on premises and in the cloud for years to give yourself some more bandwidth. However, continuous, ongoing active monitoring of your computing resources, including things like their CPU utilization, the memory utilization, the network utilization. These are all things that you should be keeping an eye on anyway, with or without AI. And if you are keeping an eye on those things and you see the resource spikes and you can't easily explain them, you should go back and look at your logs. You do have logs, don't you? That will help you figure out why you encountered a resource spike from your AI at that particular time. And even though AI, large language models, agentic AI, all require some new and novel thinking when it comes to securing them, that doesn't mean that the greatest hits of the past in information security have become inapplicable. In fact, they're even more necessary now. Things like zero trust, least privilege, encryption of information in transit, making sure that your identities, both user and computer, are well managed. These are all things that will yield lots of good results for you in the long term and will help make your AI use, as well as all of your other computer and device use, more secure. I said that I'd mention the Wild West. Well, what's interesting is that with this rise of AI and the incredible rush to get things out there, including AI agents, we're seeing a resurgence of many of the vulnerabilities that had pretty much settled down over time. And it's because there's this exuberance, this incredible excitement to get AI implemented everywhere. Often when that happens, as I mentioned in the last video, security can take a back seat. Don't let that happen. But if you want to see how that actually is happening now, there is a NetworkChuck YouTube video that I'll link to in the description for this video. And if you're okay with being both scared and entertained at the same time, you should watch this video because you can see the ways in which the current AI implementations are being subverted. And it will give you a reminder. Don't forget about the security concepts that we've known and loved for decades just because we want to get AI everywhere all at once. Keep best practices for security in mind because they became best practices in security for a reason. So what's the net out of all of this? Let's put some points up on the screen. Agentic AI is the next evolution of AI, moving AI from passive responses to active, autonomous activities. It can reason. It can break down high-level goals into an action plan, execute external tools to accomplish tasks, and remember things both short-term and long-term. It can even improve itself over time. And like large language models, agentic AI is here to stay. You'll likely see it begin to pop up in the digital services you use every day, as we have with Microsoft's Copilot. Agentic AI brings a new set of information security concerns, along with reinforcing security best practices that have evolved for all the underlying technologies, including securing your web pages, your APIs, your data, and your identities. There are great resources emerging to help tackle these security matters, including ones being developed by OWASP as part of their GenAI security project. Commercial security vendors, old and new, are getting into the act, and in fact, there's a whole new product category called an LLM firewall to help defend against things like prompt injection and data exfiltration, something we'll likely cover in a future episode. If you're an individual using AI agents, make sure to understand the settings they provide and set them as you feel comfortable. Be careful to get software only from sources that you trust. And if you're in an enterprise and getting ready to deploy AI agents locally or using the cloud services or both, understand the threat model for agentic AI. As I mentioned in the last episode, forewarned is forearmed. For a good start, check out the OWASP Agentic AI Threat and Mitigations Guide and also take a look at MITRE's Atlas framework. If you enjoyed any part of this content, please consider giving a like and subscribe. And also click the bell to be notified when a new episode drops. Also, please leave a comment to let us know what you think about agentic AI. AI is moving from passive large language models to active autonomous activities that it can take on your behalf. What do you see as the advantages and also the risks of this new age of AI? And I'll end this episode with a softball trivia question for you. Let me know in the comments if you can identify which movie this quote is from. The meeting is over. Retreat to your exits. Agents are coming. Thanks for watching Earl on AI. I'm Earl, and I'll see you next time.